Welcome to my presentation on pedagogical characteristics of learning media and media selection frameworks. Today we'll look at the educational advantages of various types of digital media and review the section's framework for media selection. So just what is a pedagogical characteristic? Pedagogy is broadly defined as method and practice of teaching and can be applied to just about anything in or involved with education. For the purposes of this presentation, pedagogical characteristics refer to the relative strengths of a teaching medium in transferring knowledge, skills, and concepts. I will be using the text Teaching in a Digital Age by Tony Bates as the primary reference. E-books or online texts represent a modern take on the most traditional of educational media. Thanks to pervasive internet access and even cheaper and more portable personal devices, online texts have become a mainstay of modern education. As Bates notes, texts are an excellent tool to transmit knowledge in a linear or hierarchical format. Historical timelines, lists of attributes, or stepwise instructions can all be well represented in textual format. Additionally, an electronic text allows the student to search for terms, highlight and select passages for further analysis, and to use hyperlinks to quickly find references. Another way to consider the affordances of a medium is through the lens of learning theory. Texts excel at behaviorist learning of unidirectional transmission of factual knowledge, providing the student with textual and static graphical representations of information. A well-written text can also exercise higher learning processes through relation of empirical evidence to abstract concepts, presenting critiques of data sources and comparing and contrasting concepts. Text can also facilitate metacognitive learning via reflection exercises, but this works best with collaboration between student peers or with an instructor. Bates also especially attributes the transmission of what he refers to as academic knowledge to texts. In his words, it is a form of knowledge that seeks abstractions and generalizations based on reasoning and evidence. According to Bates, the fundamental components of academic knowledge are particularly suited to textual format. It starts with codification, knowledge which can be consistently represented in some form. Transparency, meaning the source of the knowledge can be traced and verified. Reproduction, being that the knowledge can be reproduced and shared. And communicability, knowledge must be in a format such that it can be communicated and challenged by others. Some things that e-books are not well suited for are concepts that rely upon multidimensional or non-linear relationships that require demonstration or experimentation to grasp. This might be better taught using face-to-face or computerized methods. Another shortcoming, especially in the arena of asynchronous learning, is the disconnect between the lesson and assessments. One of the primary strengths of assessments of knowledge in the digital age is the ability to have immediate feedback with explanation, something that a text has limited ability to do. Assessment tools that actually probe the depth of complex learning require instructor feedback that cannot be provided immediately in an asynchronous course or when learning is self-directed. The huge variety of educational media tools available today is certainly a boon, but managing the delivery, assessment, record keeping, and maintenance of content can be an expensive and time-consuming task. In an effort to help educators in managing course content, the learning management system was conceived as early as 1990 and took advantage of local area networking and nascent email technology to provide user forums and discussion boards. The advent of cloud-based technology would supercharge LMS development, allowing for greatly increased functionality without the onus of storing terabytes of information placed on the institution. Most students today have had at least some exposure to an LMS like Moodle, Canvas, and D2L. These and most other LMSs cannot be said to have a specific set of pedagogical characteristics. Rather, they act as a virtual storehouse, design studio, communication and administration platform, and distribution hub, rather than a singular media type. As such, the affordances can be quite variable. But, viewed holistically, one can see that the ability for online collaboration, a vital ingredient for constructivist learning, timely feedback, instructor involvement, and automated assessment can facilitate pedagogical strategies outlined by the coursework. An LMS can be used to provide elements that span the spectrum of media: text, Audio, static and animated graphics, recorded lectures, and films all have their place, depending on the options that the institution has opted to pay for. Bates is careful to note that the tendency to under-purchase features such as professional design services can end up costing the institution more resources in the long run as the workload of creation of content is shifted to educational staff who may not have the experience of a third-party professional. This may harm educational quality by taking teaching time away from the instructors. In addition to tools for educators, an LMS can provide a means for organizing and storing student work into an e-portfolio to be used later in one's professional life or as an element of a CV. One feature that I have come to appreciate is a calendar app with due dates for work highlighted and linked. As great as all this sounds, the use of an LMS can have serious drawbacks, not the least of which is the need for a high-speed internet connection, which can be a stretch for students in countries without a strong digital infrastructure or those in rural locations. Complexity is another factor and affects both educational staff and students. As the use of LMSs become more common, students and teachers alike may require less pre-training, but the need will not disappear altogether. Virtual reality represents the bleeding edge of educational technology and has not been sufficiently researched to identify all of its potential affordances. I chose to talk about it here because it represents the opposite end of the spectrum relative to textbooks, which is not to say that it possesses wholly unique sets of pedagogical characteristics. It's possible to imagine a huge variety of contexts within which VR could be used in place of more mundane media, but as Bates suggests, the best use of any media will take advantage of its most unique affordances in order to get the most benefit from it. For instance, while a VR classroom where students are seen to be sitting in rows of desks in front of a virtual teacher is easy to imagine, it may not be the best use of the collaborative aspect of a VR chat room, where users can manipulate models, display data, and otherwise do things that are impossible in real life, and which take advantage of the cognitive and constructivist approaches that promote deep learning. Current uses for VR training tend to focus on experiential learning, where students who have completed didactic training in a complex procedure are allowed to practice their learning on a virtual version of the systems that they are expected to encounter in real life. According to research reviews performed by Samadbiek and colleagues in 2018, it has been found that virtual simulations were beneficial to the performance both of medical students and working surgeons, especially with complex procedures that require critical thinking and higher learning skills. Some of the main advantages of VR simulation highlighted by the study were the significant increases in learners' skills, the increased safety of both the physician and the patient, and the ability to train more frequently and under tightly controlled conditions. Disadvantages cited the high cost and complexity of the equipment, the need for specialized support over and above that needed for traditional surgical training, and the need for further research into cultural adaptations of the method. Selecting the best media tool or combination thereof is a subject that has been lacking in clarity for some time, and one that Bates addresses via his section model. There are 7 main considerations in the model. First, students. Much like the instructional design models of Dick and Carey and Addy, knowing your student audience is the first step of the section model. Beyond basic attributes like prior knowledge, preferred language, and inherent technical skills, Bates urges us to consider issues surrounding how the students will access the media. Ease of use. Bates suggests that students without prior experience with the tool or media should be able to get to studying in earnest within 20 minutes of opening the media. This means simplicity, intuitiveness, and cross-platform compatibility are major concerns. Cost. This may be the very first concern on some folks' minds and should be carefully considered with an eye toward quality of materials. Bates tells us that the lion's share of costs goes to the delivery of content, i.e. teaching. This is partially due to the tendency for these recurrent costs to rise with enrollment numbers. Development costs tend to be upfront and fixed in nature, so they may prove to be intimidating, but Bates warns that shorting the budget on development elements such as automated assessments and third-party professionals can tax instructors and degrade teaching quality. Teaching. This refers to the delivery of the content by a professional instructor. Bates seems to treat this element as a bit of a wild card in the section's model, allowing that even teaching that does not really exploit the educational affordances of a medium can still often get good results. Another way of saying it is that the teaching element is less important for media selection relative to issues such as access and cost. Interaction. This is the extent to which media facilitates interactions. These can be interactions with the material itself, without any intervention by the instructor. It can be between student peers, or it can be between the student and the teacher, or some combination of those. The desired level and type of interaction should be well defined by the course objectives and should include feedback opportunities throughout. Organizational issues. How ready is the institution to purchase, implement, and support the media? What are the existing teaching structures, and will they accommodate the desired media? Organizational inertia can be a roadblock to adoption of new technologies, so gaining buy-in from the top down is essential. Networking. Will it be necessary to connect students with outside sources like professionals, subject matter experts, community leaders, and members? Security and privacy. Concerns for staff and students' secure use of media extends beyond simple password protection, but also to security of speech and opinions that need not make their way into the wilds of the internet. Providing a safe place to discuss controversial ideas, ask difficult questions, and to express oneself freely is a major concern, but one that may not be easily addressed unless an institution has a centralized policy and the staff to provide education and enforcement. I've spoken about Pear Deck before, which is an add-on content creation and assessment tool for Google Slides, so let's take a look at that using the sections process. First is students. What is the institutional policy with regard to students' access to a computer, tablets, or mobile phones? Some schools actually do restrict the use of cell phones in class, so this could be an obstacle for face-to-face instruction using Pear Deck. However, it would not stand in the way of asynchronous or at-home learning. Also, is the medium or software chosen for teaching compatible with all makes of devices that the student might use? As far as Pear Deck goes, this is a yes. It's developed by Google, and so Android compatible as well as iPhones and iPads. All it really needs is an internet connection, of course. Next, is the network adequate to support any extra students that this initiative might add? So here we are with the internet again. School Wi-Fi could be taxed, so purchase of more bandwidth or creative scheduling of the class may be needed. Next, it's ease of use. Is the media intuitively easy to use both by the students and by yourself? I found the tool to be fairly intuitive. It has a lot of tutorials for those times when I couldn't find what I needed just by clicking around. Next, how reliable is the technology? Well, it's been in use widely quite a bit, in fact, since 2014, and has a satisfaction rating of over 8 points out of 10 by Google reviews. Another consideration in this category is to what extent can changes be handed over to someone else to do. Pear Deck content is very easily transferable via account credentials. So if you choose to store all of your content on the cloud, someone else can access that as soon as they have your account information. Then we have to consider what are the risks in using the technology. Beyond any security issues, content is uploaded from a personal device into the cloud and can be saved on that same device. So there should be no proprietary formatting to lose in that transfer. Cost considerations. Bates lists 5 main drivers of cost to consider when selecting media. First is development. Premium membership to Pear Deck costs $150 a year, and there is a school discount to be had, but development time is 100% up to the instructor and staff. Delivery. The tool blends seamlessly into Google Slides and Google Classroom, so if those are already being used, the added workload is minimal. Next is scalability. Access to lessons by students is not limited by additional fees, but more students does mean more administration time by the teacher. Experience needed is low, and tutorials are very easy to access. And self-development. That potential is 100% due to the simplicity of the platform. The content that needs to be covered and the desired learning outcome should be the driving force behind media selection. Pear Deck is simple and versatile enough to work with just about any content and to support just about any learning objective. Next, what instructional strategies or approaches to learning do I plan on using? Pear Deck can help facilitate many strategies, but really leaves the mechanics of all that up to the instructor to work out. What are the unique pedagogical characteristics of the media? Accessibility, customizable, formative assessments, and timely feedback opportunities really are the major strengths of Pear Deck. Interaction. For the most part, Pear Deck facilitates inherent interaction through the creation of quizzes, flashcards, prompts, and surveys, while designed interaction is facilitated through the addition of such elements into a pre-existing presentation. Organization. Thanks to the simplicity of Pear Deck, the organizational considerations probably wouldn't extend past questions like, can I get funding for the premium membership? Or will the format align with institutional curricula and learning objectives? Or will it be able to be used with our LMS? Networking. Although Pear Deck does have some features that allow group work and discussion, it doesn't really allow for the constructivist learning models that true collaboration with peers and professional engenders, so it doesn't get very high marks for that. Security. Although Pear Deck does not need to be installed on school servers or even to collect student identification data to be used, there are still concerns about proper use that should be considered. The specific steps taken by an institution and those taken by Pear Deck are beyond the scope of this discussion, so suffice it to say that IT security professionals must be engaged whenever new software like this is to be introduced into an organization. Once again, thanks for taking time to watch my presentation on media selection frameworks. I hope I've been able to add just a little something to your day.